You know what I have a really bad habit of doing? It's convincing myself that I need to fully figure out the strategy before I am allowed to start the thing. Like, if I can just get the pricing right first, figure out which markets actually fit my niche, nail down exactly what I'm making and who it's for and how I'm going to sell it and how I'm going to talk about it and what the brand looks like, then I can begin. But honestly, my attempt at recovering from perfectionism, which is clearly failing, has frankly stalled me more times than I would like to admit. In fact, if you are on our email newsletter and you were waiting a few years ago for our manual photography class, you know just how long it took me to put a new thing out into the world. Although that class is out into the world, finally. Anyway, I digress. The point is, a lot of times, the planning can feel really productive. It feels responsible. And of course, it is up to a point. But there's a version of that planning that is really just a very organized way of stalling. We could call it productive procrastination, if you will. So, what actually happens when you skip the perfect plan and just start? What does it look like to build a business in real time, letting the strategy figure itself out as you go along, instead of the other way around? Well, today's conversation with Robin Corradino of Rob Ceramics gets into exactly this. Robin's path into wholesale and consignment happened sort of by accident. And in fact, she didn't set up at a market booth until years after she'd already built a steady business. And she'll tell you herself that none of it felt nearly as intentional in the moment as it might sound looking back now. From the surprisingly under-talked about case for starting with wholesale instead of craft fairs, to how Robin uses her magnet club to carve out dedicated creative playtime outside of production work, to why paying attention to where your orders are coming from might tell you more about your audience than any ideal customer avatar exercise ever could. If you've ever just needed to figure out the strategy first as a reason to actually not begin the thing, well, then this episode's for you. Let's get right into it right after this brief word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by The Community, your creative business support system with over 100 makers from around the world. With both the practical education you need to make a living from the things you make, found in our masterclasses on topics like finances, marketing, and SEO, plus the emotional support of fellow makers who truly understand what it's like to try and make a living from the things we make. It's like having both a business school designed specifically for artists and a team of colleagues who actually get what you're going through. But you don't have to take my word for it.
Hi everyone, this is Melissa of MWY Pottery. I've been a member of the Makers Playbook community for over a year and a half, but not consecutively. I first joined when I was relatively new to selling my ceramics and wanted more support in doing that. This year, I joined a different ceramics mentorship program to focus on my artistic development and paused my community membership to decrease business expenses, with the plan to rejoin the community at several points throughout the year for the master classes. But who was I kidding? I didn't even last a month. I missed the community and the people so much, especially our co-working sessions, so I just rejoined for the year. So if you're a parent like me and you're signing your kid up for summer camps right now, and you don't even hesitate to pay the same cost for a 1-year community membership for a 1-week K-pop Demon Hunters dance camp for your child, I kid you not, but you hesitate to treat yourself, consider this an invitation to learn more. Feel free to ask me questions on Instagram at MWY Pottery, and I hope you join us soon.
Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur of 14 years, Rebecca Ikis Kara. It's funny because it's one of those questions that, it doesn't feel like a big question to me asking it, but then when I get asked it, when the roles are reversed, I'm like, oh God, yeah, you're right. This is really difficult.
I get that when people are like, so what do you do? And I have to pause and I'm like, I'm a potter. I do ceramic artist. Yeah. I don't know. Why is it so hard?
Right? Well, because then you can go down the whole rabbit hole of pottery, ceramics. Sometimes I say potter because I think that's the more layman's term. And so somebody will know it. And then they look at me like, huh? And I'm like, I make ceramics. And they're like, oh, I'm like, how do you know ceramics, but not pottery?
Yeah, like, I make stuff that you drink out of.
I
Y
think you should go with that. I think
Okay, great.
I had a business mentor of mine once say, like, they would answer that question because it's, like, the most boring question, right? When you're networking, you're meeting someone for the first time. We don't have very interesting questions that we ask, especially, I feel like, American culture. So, answering it in a way that makes people, like, ask a follow-up question is actually, like, an entire networking technique.
Yeah, okay, so confuse bamboozle them and then draw them in.
Bamboozle. There's a word that needs to be used more often.
I feel like I use it. It's, like, It's in now.
I now want to figure out a way of how this conversation, the theme can be such that I can use the word bamboozle in the title of the episode.
I think we can get there.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to say, hey, Robin, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
And I might just leave all that in as a cold open because we're going to need to explain how we started talking about bamboozling.
Okay, yes, just expansive vocabulary of words you haven't heard since you were 12. Love it.
Precisely. And for anyone listening outside, I don't know how much the word bamboozle crosses the various English language across. Like, I don't think it's going to get to the Brits or Australia or New Zealand or many other places.
We might be surprised, though. I know some people we can ask.
We both know some
Yeah.
people we can ask,
Yeah.
right? We might as well just define the word before we actually start talking about you and the pottery that you make.
So that people don't feel bamboozled by this.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Ooh, I see what you did there. Well done. That's it. That's the show.
Okay, great.
Doesn't get any better.
It's been good. Thanks so much.
I love it. How do you define bamboozled, though, in all seriousness?
I would say, like, a surprise confusion
Mm-hmm.
or, like, something out of nowhere that's caught you off guard.
Yes, I like surprise confusion. Yes. With both of those, they both connect. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Or, like, maybe also, like, being tricked somehow, but, like, you've bamboozled me,
Mm-hmm.
but, like, it takes the bite out of it.
Yeah, because it's one of those, I don't think it was ever an actual old-timey phrase, but you can't say it in a serious way. You can't be like, you tricked me, like an angry toddler. It, like, bamboozled. Like, you have to do it like a
It lightens the mood
cartoon.
a little bit. It's
Mhm.
levity.
Yes. All right. It's like a trickster type of energy where it's like someone may have tricked you, but it's not malicious. Like,
Yeah.
you can be bamboozled into going to your friend's favorite restaurant,
We're
but
talking
you also
like,
like the restaurant.
yeah, we're talking like Looney Tunes energy a little bit. Like,
Yes.
you know, you ran into the tunnel painted on the wall, but you're okay.
Correct. There's stars and
Yes.
birds spinning around your head.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Bamboozled is just the stars.
Yep. Cool. I love this so much.
Okay,
And I
good.
love that Looney Tune energy. I was like, well, this feels like a natural segue to start talking about Cheez-Its.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can talk about Cheez-Its.
But before we get to Cheez-Its, I'm going to make you introduce yourself so people understand why we're going to talk about Cheez-Its.
I am Robin Corradino. I make pottery, ceramics, under the name Rob Ceramics. And the reason why it's Rob Ceramics is because when I think of like my good friends growing up, some of them would call me Rob, and that's a very like endearing term. And so I also think that when you use pottery I make, there's like there's an implied intimacy there. So it's like we're friends. So you can skip right to the Rob part.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know. For all the years I've known you, I didn't know that. And I love that. That's great.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's kind of I feel like there are layers to I always have a reason for why I pick things. Maybe not always, but I often have more reasons than are on the surface.
I mean, which is like, not to get straight into branding, but here we go. Like, that is generally the marker of a great brand, to have a story there that's not just like some made up whatever, but like have something meaningful that you can then share and connect. And I should say, like, a brand for the businesses of the scale that we're all interested in doing, as opposed to, you know, I don't know, Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
But even then, they're trying to connect with you. What with the
Yeah.
polar bears and Santa Claus?
And I think even before you get to the point of telling the story and connecting, I think that we as consumers of or, you know, collectors of pottery and lovers of art, we have an intuitive sense for like when there is a reason for things and like that there's more to it, even if we don't know right off the bat what it is or why. So I think when you have when you have a well thought through piece or idea, or there's something that makes what you're doing the reason why it is that way. Whether or not people know that just by looking at it, I've noticed that I think there is an intuitive like draw. It has some
Mm,
energy that people pick up on more depth. I don't know,
yeah.
maybe that's like a little woo woo, but I'll be woo woo. It's fine.
I don't think it's that woo because I think it's in alignment with the idea that if you make things that you enjoy, you know, it's funny because it was the thing the first year of starting the podcast, I remember hearing over and over from so many people being like, you need to make what you like. You need to make what you like first and figure out how to sell it second. And I was like, that all sounds nice, except you need to pay the bills. So how does that even work? And now, 5 years later, I'm like, yeah, that's integral, whichever way you want to say it, because it's a lot easier to sell things that you're excited about in a non-slimy kind of way. You're going to feel good about it.
Yeah, and I think
Right?
that those two truths find each other in the middle.
Mhm.
Like, yes, we wanna make things we like because no one wants to be trapped making something you don't like, and it's not fun and it's not genuine to sell that. But if you're making a bunch of stuff you're like and no one else is liking it, then you're not gonna get very far, and so I think if you can pay attention and pick up on the clues and make what you like and then be attentive to what's resonating, that will
Mm,
be what helps everything kind of, like, develop and move forward, and that
mm.
will bring your if you continue to let that develop your style, then inevitably, if you keep going, you will land on something that people like that you'll find your people, they'll find you a lot of times too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also think maybe there's a sliding scale of how much you like things, which sounds silly, but like we all can bemoan having to make handles, right? It is the universal frustration of potters, perhaps, except Naomi Clement, who can teach you how to make some damn good handles, should you like. I would say, even as proficient as Francesco is, it still is a nuisance in some ways. But we're still making mugs, right? Whereas, like, there's something that's maybe interesting and new to try and learn how to make you've never made before. Like, there can be a sliding scale of like, don't make something you absolutely hate, but also you're still probably going to make some mugs come Christmas time because people are going to purchase those. But you can put a barrier around like just how many you're going to make, if you have whatever revenue goal, or you only make X number per month so that you have time to make these other things that light you up even more. Stuff like that, where it's like not an all or nothing some game.
I think that just because you don't like making handles doesn't mean that you don't like handles. When you and
Mm,
Francesca put the handles on your mug, do you like that handle that you make? Like, does it feel good to you? Are you proud of it?
yes,
Because
most of them.
yeah.
Not all of them.
But, like, process is process, and there's always gonna be parts that lag, and that's just part of life and part of what we're doing here. But if you have to grind your way through making those handles, and then
Mhm.
at the end you're just mad at it and you hate it, then that's not fun. But if you look at it and you're like, "That is a damn good handle, and that feels amazing," well, then there's some reward that comes from that.
Mhm. I think that I don't remember who I was talking to about this recently, but I think craftsmanship and art in general are some of the only remaining places where we have such a delayed gratification.
Mhm.
And I say craftsmanship also with like the arts period. I'm talking learning an instrument, learning a craft in the sense of like how to throw, how to hand build, how to make a good handle, all of these things. Like pick any fiber arts, painting, whatever it is. Like it's kind of the last place where we have this delayed gratification, which I think is partially incredibly frustrating for people, and it's also the thing that draws us in because there is such a reward to making something really well, to seeing that progression of like the first handle you ever tried to make to the first one you're ever proud of, and however many years, months, weeks, whatever it took you to get there. I'm gonna go years for myself.
Mm.
I still don't like my handles, but
But that's
Francesca makes nice
process.
handles.
That's
Right.
I mean, then pottery is process. Like, we don't do it because we're immediately good at everything all the time. Like, and that's what makes it good, like that's what makes it worthwhile. And you're just not gonna love every part of the process, but you can still, I don't know, find again, this I sound kind of woo, but like you can find a way to like make peace with it and just like embrace it as part of what makes the whole, which you could argue is the human condition altogether. So I don't know. Is this a philosophy podcast now?
Might be. It's funny because number one, I'm trying to think of how long that we've known each other now. At least like what, 3, 4
Yeah, I
years?
think I took
The
I took the
first
photo class about 3 years ago. It
3
wasn't
years
the
ago.
first
Yeah.
round, but
You weren't, yeah, but it was early. It was
mhm.
early. But it's funny that well, so number one, you weren't like overly woo. So it's funny that we've talked about woo twice now because I'm like, didn't see that coming. Number two, Francesco would agree with you completely around the human condition because that's for him is like philosophically like why we make what we make. It's like, yes, there's other ways to do things. You could whip out more dinnerware by using forms or whatever, but the whole point is like for it be connected to that kind of human existence and making you more human and making, like that effect on your character as opposed to if we want to do anything as efficient as we are and efficient and as production potters are in general, like there's still an innate inefficiency compared to mass production, right? Like
Mhm.
you're doing it on purpose that way for some kind of reason. Because otherwise you would just, I don't know, ship it off and have it be produced in the thousands.
Yeah, I think the concept of paradox is something I think about a lot and something I've
Mm.
been thinking about a lot, and I would say is actually what I would define my work as, like, what it's about, which is that layer I'm talking about where I'm like, people don't know this because you're not gonna look at a rainbow mug or a Cheez-It mug and be like, "Those are some deep thoughts on the human condition," because it's not on the surface, but it really is how I think about it, and which is exactly to your point of production and the inefficiency and, like, what we're trying to do and the reasons why we're doing it don't always seem to fit together very well, but that's also what makes it good is that space and like the dissonance and the negotiation and the harmony that exists. And so that's what I think about when I think about like my forms and my mugs is I consider myself a production potter. I apprenticed under a production potter and I had to learn how to make a bunch of mugs over and over again and do a million handles and get really tight on the form. And I still chase that tight form. And that's why I like production doing things over and over again because I think of it as like the next batch will always be a little bit better. Like there's always room to improve. So my forms are always working on that. And then my glazing is a lot more like gestural and it's dipping and pouring and things that are a little tighter and more controlled now because I've just gotten really good at the technique. But it was like born out of how can I play with this and give it some more of that life and fluidity. And so I have these two elements that are important to me that don't go together. And I think you've heard me say this before, but I think of it as like my little Martha Stewart on one shoulder and my Bob Ross on the other. When one of
Not
them
Snoop Dogg?
Snoop Dogg he can come later and hang out, and he's where the vibes come in. Uh,
Right, fair enough.
but I've got Martha, like, encouraging me to, like, pursue excellence and always try to do better and be tighter and make everything more precise. But then I need the little Bob Ross being like, "But those imperfections and the happy accents that come along are what make it good." And the fact because if what's important is that it's perfectly perfect and perfectly round, then why aren't we just mass producing it?
Right.
So those are my
Why is
little,
it
like
handmade?
yeah, exactly. So my little shoulder friends keeping me somewhere in the middle.
I have to show you. Nobody's going to be able to see this because they're listening, but I don't think you knew that I had a Bob Ross bobblehead on my shelf.
I did not know that. I love him.
Uh,
Now you need a Martha Stewart one.
Re- I mean, maybe. I've got enough of that mentality in my brain. We need more of
Yeah,
we
right.
need more like she doesn't need to increase her influence.
Fair enough, fair enough. But, like, that's exactly what we're trying to find the space in between.
You know what? That's so I don't think I have heard you mention that before. And if I had, I forgot. But it makes so much sense to me now when I think about your work because it is so consistent. It is tight in many ways. But then there is this, what's the right description?
Like, whimsicalness? Yeah,
There's just this fun to it. Yeah. Like making Cheez-It magnets
mhm.
is you're doing it in a production way, but then it's also really freaking fun. Or I'm not going to take this story out of your mouth. I'm going to have you tell this story that you recently shared, which, full disclaimer, in the community that you're a part of, about doing the tally or the. See, I'm already messing up the story. Your market recently about Cheez-Its versus goldfish.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it just it yeah, I started making Cheez-Its a while ago. I made Cheez-Its mugs and Cheez-It magnets, and then I expanded my magnet repertoire and had goldfish suggested. I was like, "Oh, that's fun." So I started making goldfish, and it was really interesting to see how many people had such strong feelings on Cheez-Its versus goldfish. And I'd figured out, I mean, it's been a few years that I've been doing the Cheez-Its. So, like, I have figured out that people have strong feelings on Cheez-Its, which is really fun. Like, people love to come up and tell me about their best friend who loves Cheez-Its, or their husband loves white cheddar, or this road trip they went on with their best friend and the Cheez-It spilled all over the car, and that's what makes them think of it. And so it's really, like, opened up a way to talk to people, which has been fun. And then once I introduced the goldfish, I started asking people when they came into my booth, I was like, are Cheez-Its or goldfish? And I was very surprised at how split it was. And a lot of people were like, both. But if I had to pick one, so yeah, I don't know, it's a fun way to connect with people and talk about something that they're not expecting to talk about in a pottery booth. And it sells Cheez-Its. I mean, you know.
This is the part that I feel like, if you were to take an official kind of sales or marketing class, there would be some big strategy to it all. I don't think you started it as a part of a strategy, but just something fun and a way to connect with people in a way that also meets people where they are. It's not like a backing up. I think art fairs or art can be intimidating for people if they don't feel like they know anything about art, or that, they don't want to ask a dumb question or whatever when they're coming into a booth. But everybody can talk about Cheez-Its and goldfish.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is the Bob Ross encouraging me to loosen my grip on what I think the branding and the sales and the strategy needs to be, because I do like strategy. We all do. I think everyone in the community is interested in strategy and likes it. And I think sometimes we get caught up in, this method or that method, and we need to have this, and we need to, and, there's the whole, like, figure out who you're selling to and think of your ideal customer and all that. It's useful exercises, but I've found that more of those things have revealed themselves to me, and it's not all about, like, defining everything and then head down going for it. You have to look around a little bit and see who's telling you what. And I mean, I just made a Cheez-It mug one time because, I don't know, I had an idea. I mean, there's also an amount of interest I have in, like, shape and, all those elements. But a Cheez-It was a great vehicle for it, and it's fun, and we love Cheez-Its in my house, and blah, blah, blah. And then people told me they liked it, and they showed me they liked it, and the excitement and the delight that came with it kept me going on it, and that has turned into other things. And the same thing with, like, the style of my other work, what I call my Horizon mugs now. Those are the ones that have the very gestural dipping and the colors. And I didn't design those to look like mountains at all. I made those.
Wait, what?
No, I made them because I was just interested in the glaze and the shape and seeing what happened if I dipped it this way and that. And then
this feels like breaking news.
Well, I mean, and then people kept being like, oh, the mountain landscape. And I mean, I was always just like, okay, sure, like, sounds great. But then I just leaned into it more. And the reason why I started leaning into it more is because I started noticing more interest from those kinds of people. And, it's selling wholesale. I was like, I'm getting a lot of orders from mountain towns and places like Wyoming and, like, Washington and Oregon, and places that have those kinds of landscapes. And I noticed that it was like river sports boutiques and things like that, mountain like literally in the names. And I was like, this is telling me something. So I started to lean more into that. And I didn't change the mug at all. It's the same it's always been. I've just played with the colors because that's fun. But that's what I mean when I think that sometimes if you're onto something good, like, your people will find you, and you just have to pay attention and see what they're responding to and then go from there. And I don't mean change your work and cater to what you think people want, but let your audience reveal themselves to you, and don't miss it by just paying attention to what you think you should be paying attention to.
I love the way you've flipped the script on this, because I have always said, like, it's, there's 100% truth in, like, defining who your audience is. But I've also said, like, it's really hard to do that until you start, right? Until you start going, and then you get a sense of, do I like selling wholesale? Do I like doing shows? Do I like doing direct to consumer? There's all these avenues and options we can take to build a business. And so you have to try things to a certain extent. But the nuance you've added to it is, like, paying attention to who's paying attention to you, in the sense. But rather than thinking of it as defining an ideal client, it's more like make what you like to make, pay attention to who is attracted to that. And if you connect with those people, then learn more about what makes those people tick, why they're interested. Like, stay, I don't know, I guess stay observant. Like, we think of being observant all the time to find our voice and our style and it's the aesthetic. And I think it was Adam Fields who said on his episode way back when to like pay attention to what you pay attention to, kind of thing. That's, I mean, it's not only his words. Plenty of people have talked about that with inspiration. So I think of it when it comes to like the aesthetics of craft, but it's also perfectly sound advice when it comes to learning about your business and your marketing efforts.
Yeah, I mean, it's all iterating too, right? Like if you're making something and no one's paying attention, no one's responding, that doesn't mean you have to abandon it all and start over. I mean, you can if you want, but if you can just like push it a little further and try something else and then see and just kind of like inch it along, you might get somewhere at some point. You have to give
Mhm.
things time to develop and unfold and just see what's happening.
And I think that's the hardest part is that for people who are genuinely curious about data in a way, and I don't just mean data in like a spreadsheet kind of way, but in like a, oh, let me try this, see what the results are, and then iterate and then watch those results and, kind of do it very much as people have heard me talk about the scientific process, like one variable at a time. It's easier if you're naturally drawn to that to want to do something like that. Whereas I think for so many of us from a creative bend, you get into whatever craft, the arts in general, but ceramics as well, because you just want to like play and not have and just go to town on whatever you're drawn to in any given day. And then it's really hard to find those through lines and get that traction because if you're going from, I don't know, production produced mugs in a white glaze one week to like crystalline lidded jars or something the next week. I don't know. These are bad examples, but like, I don't know, sgraffito and just radically different styles and jumping all over the place, then it's hard to figure out like where is that Venn diagram between what I'm enjoying and what is responding.
Yeah. And I also feel compelled to say that talking about this in retrospect, it all seems like I was very patient and measured and had a plan and was being meticulous. But I mean, I wasn't. I just kept going and kept doing things, and little bits of information floated in and got saved. And now I can put it all together, and I feel more equipped to follow that path going forward. But I'm not the person who's like, as much as I do love a good spreadsheet, I'm not the person who's like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to patiently wait, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to observe it all. I feel compelled to clarify that I'm not that measured and intentional as it might sound. I just have a lot of retrospect to be able to put it all into context now.
Speaking of retrospect, let's back it up. Tell me when did Rob Ceramics begin, but if there's story before the official beginning of Rob Ceramics, take it wherever you want to begin the story.
Okay. Well, it was a Thursday in 1991, and I won't get that far. Um, but I do sometimes have a little bit of a hard time defining exactly when I started clay because there was always like a little bit of clay around. I remember going to like, my Jewish hippie summer camp and playing on the wheel, and that was fun. But my first like real meaningful class was my senior year, last semester of college. So of course that's a terrible time to start something new that you won't be able to do for a while. A couple years went by. I started taking classes at the community college out in Portland. Did that a few more years. This is all pre like Rob Ceramics. Moved to Augusta, Georgia, where my husband's from, for a year. And that's where I apprenticed for, it's called Tire City Potters, but Shashir was my mentor, and he's just an eccentric potter guy in Georgia. Because I moved from Portland, a place that is rich in pottery studios and art resources. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'll just find a pottery studio there. That won't be an issue. And let me tell you, Augusta is not Atlanta. And there was one pottery place, and it was Tire City Potters with Shashir. And we walked in, and he was like, oh yeah, I take apprentices, you know how to throw. And I was like, oh yeah, I know how to throw. I've taken some classes, I can do stuff, whatever. He's like, great, sit down. So I sat down at the wheel and started throwing, and he's just watching me. He's like, well, you don't know how to throw, but that's okay. I can teach you. So
I love that.
and of course I was just like I know how to, I know what I'm, the hubris that you have. And then now looking back, I'm like, oh, I didn't know how to do that. So I was there for about a year. It wasn't like my full time thing and I didn't get paid, but I learned a ton under him. And then after that year, we decided to move to Richmond, Virginia, where I am now, because going from San Francisco to Portland to Augusta, Georgia is a big culture shock. So we went back up to Richmond again in a place rich in pottery studios. I did some community studio stuff and then evolved into Rob Ceramics, which so this is like a classic Robin. Like, here's a 10-minute answer to your relatively simple question.
It's not a
Um,
simple question. I said start wherever you want to start. And I love 10-minute answers because then I don't have to think about what to say for a very long time.
okay, great. Okay, and then so a couple years after doing community studio stuff, or maybe a year, I don't know, I started selling at the shop I was working at. So that's the other part of the story. I was a florist for about 10 years, floral design before I left Portland, and then it's just been a thing that I've done for a while. So when we moved to Richmond, I worked at a flower shop. And this is like, I think, something that bamboozles people from time to time is that didn't start out like most people do doing craft fairs and markets and things. I started in stores. And it wasn't, I didn't go straight to wholesale. It was consignment, really. But the great thing about working in a flower shop with a little boutique is that you can sell things in the boutique if you have a really great supportive boss like I did, who would just kind of let me bring in whatever and price it and observe, which was, I mean, she wasn't like, observe your people, but I was working there and people didn't know it was my work. So I got to kind of see people pick it up and interact with it and pay attention to what people liked. And then after a few years of that, I started getting invitations to consign in like other local stores and here and there. And that's when it kind of like spiraled. And then I started doing wholesale because that's a world I understand from the boutique side. So that was helpful. And now I'm finally just getting into the in-person markets. The one you mentioned I did a couple weeks ago was my first ever after several years of selling, which is what some people would consider backwards maybe, but I think it served me really well to go in that order.
Yeah, I love that you went in that order just because of how interesting it is, just because so many, well, I guess, I don't know if I was going to say the obvious option, but I don't know if it is obvious. It's just what you hear about the most, right?
It's a little more
um,
accessible maybe, or like more like you can just sign yourself up and do it if you get in, as opposed to having to like interface with the store and get them to agree, maybe.
yeah, that, and I feel like wholesale maybe setting aside, and we can get into the whole pricing side of it, or we can just tell everybody to go watch the masterclass that's in the community that we just had because it was amazing
Mhm.
with Rebecca Graves. Maybe wholesale feels like you have to have more business acumen. Like there's a little bit more like jargon in terms of the fact that people aren't buying Christmas mugs in December, they're buying Christmas mugs in August. And like your retail experience, I'm sure really informed understanding. Like you knew what that timeline looked like from working in boutiques before and kind of what that expectation would be rather than realizing, oh, shoot, I was supposed to make Christmas stuff 2 months ago and now I can't get any wholesale clients for this season type of thing.
Yeah, that definitely it is a little bit trippy when people are like, it's Christmas time, and I'm like, it's been Christmas for 6 months. But that is definitely part of it. I think also I have an understanding of what it's like to be the person receiving the box, opening it, thinking about how to merchandise it, where it's going to go. And then one step further, I think, is I know what kind of seller I want to be because I know what kind of store I want to sell to. Because I'm looking at the small boutiques that are independently owned that maybe don't have, they can't do a $500 opening order because they don't know your product and they don't know if their people are going to like it. So maybe they want to start with a $150 order, which is maybe like 4 to 6 mugs. And there are schools of thought that will tell you that your opening order should be a certain volume and this to make the numbers work. And that is true if you're working with a certain scale of retailer, but if you're talking about small galleries that have a tiny amount of space that can't take that big of a risk, well, they're not going to take a chance on you if they don't know you. So, I mean, some of my first orders were like $100 wholesale orders that I shipped off. And then a month later, I got $1,000 order from that same place because they got to see it, hold it, feel it, see how their people responded to it. So I think that has really informed a lot of my strategy, is not just thinking about the grand wholesale advice and the way you should do things, but thinking about the actual experience of the people I know, like my old bosses and managers and my coworkers, and what it's like for them to unbox a piece and put it on the shelf and what they actually need. Do they need a fancy GTIN and a UPC number? The shops I'm selling at really don't. Like, if you think about the cute neighborhood shop that has higher end things, and you go in there and you're looking around and you pick up a piece and you turn it over to see the price, are you seeing a barcode? Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah. So I think that perspective has kind of helped me focus on how to direct my strategy towards, and I say that again as a strategy, like I'm so strategic. No, it's just helped me think about what's important to the people that I'm really trying to sell to, so that I don't get lost in the sauce and all the other things that you feel like need to happen that maybe don't actually matter as much for this set of retailer.
I think this is such a great point because it emphasizes something that I've had in my brain for a while now, and I don't know that I've vocalized it, or if who knows, maybe I've said it off and on over time. But like the huge difference between online businesses, e-commerce that are not handmade, and then those that are actually like requiring your hands to make the thing that you are making. Because from my perspective and what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is just such a different reality for us in how our businesses are set up, in what our desires are. I mean, Rebecca Graves said this during the masterclass in terms of, she might have said it before the masterclass. It might not have been on the record. So, spoiler, she had a business coach who she like had I don't think she like had an interview with this coach or whatever. And she basically spelled out all the ways in which Rebecca could grow, other Rebecca, not me, just for anybody half listening, all the ways she could grow Graves Co. to make all this kind of money so that she could just sit on the beach and drink cocktails. And all of that involved then Rebecca Graves not making any pottery, right? It was all the ways in which she could expand a team and grow the business and make all this money so you can go and sit on a beach and have a cocktail. And it was like, but the whole point is for our hands to be in the clay. That's what we want. Like, the goal was not to outsource the whole thing. So she was like, you don't get this at all. You don't get what my actual goal is here. So like all your strategy, all your stuff that you're pitching doesn't fit at all, because that's not my goal. That's not what I want. And I think that's the case with so much of the conversation I see online around, the best practices of Shopify, the best practices even of Etsy, of how big you need an email list to be successful, or like, I don't know, pick a buzzword that you've Googled to try and find out more about. And the top 3 articles that hit are probably not geared towards the reality of handmade craft.
And the reality of handmade craft is the person-to-person connection. So you might not find those answers by Googling or asking AI. You're going to find the answers in the strategy by going to visit the places where you want to see your work. My unsolicited advice to everyone, well, maybe it's solicited because they're listening to this, but my advice is,
I have solicited you.
yes, if you want to figure out what the important things are to do to get your work where you want it to be, first figure out where you want it to be. Think about the stores where you imagine your pieces fitting in really well. Like, where do you see on the, like, what store do you walk into and you think my work would look amazing in this shop? Well, go to that shop and look around and pay attention to how they merchandise. Did they have only 2 of a single item? Do they have 10 on the shelf? Do they stack it up? Do they mix it around with other things? Like, what colors are they stocking? Do they change those colors every season? Or does it tend to be like, when I go into this shop, I know I'll find lots of like dark blues and tans? Like, that's the information you need to get to the stores you want to be in. And the first thing you have to do is figure out what stores you want to be in, because I mean, we have some other community members who are on Fair, and are doing great, and the stores that stock their work are never gonna be the stores that stock my work, which is another argument for, like, abundance and sharing and enough to go around, which is a whole other topic, but it just goes to show, like, if you can define what you're doing and what you're trying to do and make sure that you're catering to those people, then you will be more successful than if you try to just check all the boxes and make the robots happy.
Mm, amen to that. I mean, done. That's it. I want to back us up a little bit even more because we talked about how you naturally went into boutiques, coming out of working with floral and boutiques and retail, and that was the natural place for you to step into when it came to selling your work. So I wanted to back us up a little bit because I knew we would probably talk about wholesale, but just to make it super clear for everybody in terms of kind of what, I don't know if goals feels like too big of a word, but like the type of business you're setting up, I guess. Like what lights you up, what you enjoy, why the store connections is still something that's like your bread and butter, for lack of a better phrase, I would say. I feel like it's the core of your business for what I know from an
Yeah.
outside looking in.
It really comes down to that those are my people. Like, that's what I did. I worked in retail. I mean, I worked at flower shops, but flower shops often have a retail side. So I just know that world pretty well. I feel connected to it. And I mean, I know I said the first like market I did was recently, which was like the actual set up a tent and have a booth and pay a vendor fee. But I've done pop-ups and like community studio events and I do sell on my website when I remember to put things on it and keep up with it. And I am trying to expand that all a little bit more and, go further down those different areas because diversification is good. And also, the more that I do send out these wholesale orders, the more response I get on those channels. So I
Mm.
don't think it's a coincidence that if I ship out a big order to a small town in Wyoming and then a month later I get a couple orders that go to Wyoming, like that's not a coincidence.
That goes back, I'm pausing you right there because that goes back to what we were saying before in terms of like paying attention to who's paying attention,
Mhm.
right? Like when we're talking about quote unquote ideal audience, whatever that means, like you're finding your people through the stores, but then within that, finding that people are paying attention to what you're doing. Like obviously, the people coming into those stores and purchasing from those stores are then in turn your people. And like noticing that it's not a coincidence that you shipped something out to Wyoming after you sent, like it was just like such a passing comment. And I was like, no, 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 that is like an important thing to think about, like paying attention to.
Yeah. And I get emails too, like not all the time, but like I got an email the other day from someone who's like, I was visiting, someone in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I saw you and she made a point of being like, it's hard for me to find mugs that I like, but like the weight, the shape, the handle, all these things. And those are like exactly the things that I have put a lot of consideration into. So it's just really rewarding to be like, that has resonated, which goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. It's like, just because not all of the thought that I put into things are apparent on the very, very surface doesn't mean that they're not still there and part of the
Hmm.
piece. So it's cool when it lands with somebody. So I don't know. I think working with shops is a really great way to get access to people that I would never otherwise connect with. And that's what my big argument too when people sometimes get a little sheepish about wholesale because of the price. It's not a price cut like Rebecca said. It's a different pricing structure, but there really is a burden on the stores that they take on when they take on your work because they are now responsible for selling. They own it. They have to sell it. And you get access to their audience and their resources and their marketing and all of those things that I would never reach those people ever. And now those people have my work. So now they can call me Rob because they're my friends. And those people are also reaching out to me and following me on social media and ordering from my website. So I think sometimes there's like a misconception that wholesale is flat and it's a 50% cut and it's just not good for you and it's not sustainable for people like us. But I think there's a lot more value in it than people give it credit for. You really need to take the time to be thoughtful about how you're doing it and why and paying attention.
I love also that while we've talked about strategy and how strategy really, I mean, we didn't say this explicitly, but I was thinking like basically you can only strategize so much on the front end. Like you really need strategy grows over time and comes alongside all the things you learn by doing, right? And that's like why I mean, going back to the community, that's why that's why I've never written a business course where somebody can just purchase it and then watch it on demand as they want and leave because it's not
It's the classic "it depends" answer.
exactly. It does, and it's like that strategy grows and changes, and what worked for you last year might not work for you this year and all of that, but I love in tandem with that how much what I'm hearing is the focus on genuine relationships. Like, it's endearing it was endearing initially when you told the story of Rob Ceramics and that's what your friends call you, but, like, then when you just said, "Those people can call me Rob because they're my friends, because they have my work," like, in that was in complete seriousness to me. Like, it wasn't that's not strategy, that's not like, "Oh, I love what I do, so I'm best friends with my clients," or whatever. That was like, "No, like, this is why you do what you do because ceramics is intimate, and so the people who are holding your mug for their morning routine are now your friends, so they get to call you Rob."
Yeah.
Like, I it's I feel like for me, what I hope people are hearing is it's taking away the thing I get annoyed about all the time, which is I can't think of the right word, but just the bad taste the arts world has so much around business and sales and marketing, right? Because this is all very genuine. This is like, no, I named it this because ceramics is intimate, and if you have my mug, then we're friends. Not like as part of a strategy. I'm going to write this way online, and therefore, like this is what I mean when I'm thinking about, like, don't ghost your email list because those are your friend like,
Yeah. And I think
I'm
you
stumbling over my words, but I hope people get it.
Yeah. No, I get it. For me, all of this has been kind of a slow burn in some
Mhm.
ways too. And with the same way that like making a friend can be a slow burn. Sometimes I mean, to be perfectly honest, some of my favorite people in the world and the best friends I had the first time I met them, I was like, I don't know about this person. You know? and then and then and then you get to know
Be
them and
sure to just send them this section of the interview.
yeah, well, I don't think they think they are. I love them. I love you all. I love all my friends. But it's the same with that whole story about how Rob Ceramics came to be. I didn't mean to do this full time ever. And I mean, I would say that I always liked clay. Obviously, I stuck with it, but I don't identify as the person who touched clay for the first time and was like, this is the rest of my life. I was actually pretty resistant to going full time for a long time because I was like, it's a thing I do and I like it and I'll sell it a little bit on the side, whatever. But as I was just ready to move on from the florist part of my life, and then I, looked into interviewing for some other corporate jobs, which I'd never done before, which was just not a world that we don't want each other. I it just sort of became the thing that made the most sense, and I ended up leaving my job to help my husband start his contracting business, and that was gonna be kinda what I was like, "Well, I'll mostly do that, and then I'll just ramp up the pottery a little bit." And then it started to take over. So, I think maybe that's the theme of everything that I'm talking about here is that if you just stick with things and let them unfold, like, it will find you, and that's not to say, like, just sit back and don't try or whatever, but sometimes you have to, like, loosen your grip a little bit and just let things happen, and now this is what I'm doing, and I like it,
Mhm.
but, like, 3 years ago, I probably would've been like, "No, I don't wanna go full time."
I was gonna say how that was I was trying to think about the timeline of that, like, how when do you feel not that you can, like, pinpoint it down to the day, but when do you feel like that flip changed from just assuming, like, "Oh, this will just always be the thing on the side, I like it, and I'll sell a little," to, "Oh, actually, this is it."
It just ramped up, Before I left my job, I had kind of dabbled a little bit with wholesale because the shop that I worked at used Fair, and I was, like, looking at it, I was like, "I could try this out." So I got on Fair a few months before I left, and then I started getting a few orders, and I was like, "Okay, great, like, I'll do a little bit like, that seems like there's potential there. I'll do a little more of that when I'm not working in the flower shop full time." And then some more orders started coming in, and then I had a really, like, dead month, and I just spent a lot of time working on the listings and, like, watching things and figuring it out, and ever since then, it's just kinda, like, built up and built up, and I mean, I still do some things for the contracting company, I do some bookkeeping and stuff, but it's just getting to be less and less as my time is now here in this room. all the time.
without an overhead light, which just tells you when you need
Yes.
to go home.
Yes, exactly. I like to work with the cycles of the seasons.
I love that. I love that.
Makes it very fortunate that Christmas is happening in August.
Well, yeah. Well, that actually is perfect alignment in so many ways now that I think about it. I want you to never add lighting in your studio. I think you should always work with the seasons. You're going to have like a pseudo blue zone in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, I like it. And it would mess up my photos too if I added lighting. So there's that.
See, there you go. Pro tip, everybody, don't light your studio.
Yeah. If you've got great windows, you've got everything you need.
Right, exactly. And you will have to stop yourself from sort of overworking, although you probably go home and can get on a computer. So,
Yeah, sometimes. But yeah, and I mean, the owners of this building are great. This is an old furniture factory that they bought and turned into art studios and keep it really affordable. They would 100% put in lighting if I asked them to. They have offered, but I don't want that. I like it this way.
I love it. So, when I'm just now realizing when you guys moved, did your husband start the contracting business when you moved to Richmond?
No, we'd been in Richmond for 4 years when he
Okay.
started the contracting business, but he's been a carpenter for as long as I've known him, and that's I mean, and so our business is kind of he started maybe 6 months before I, like, really ramped up in the ceramics thing, so we're very in step with what's happening in our businesses, and they're different businesses, but they're both at their core craft businesses, so we have a lot of conversation. Like, we find ourselves dealing with a lot of the same things, whether that's like business stuff, but also like the philosophy of craft and what's important and what we can let go and all of those things.
Well, that's exactly what I was realizing was that the timing was, it sounded to me very similar in the sense of like when he started his business and when you left the floral shop were kind of the same time, which is a huge deal. Like, that's a big freaking deal as a household that used to be fully self-employed.
Yeah, it was some months apart, but around the same time.
Months apart. Yeah, that's less than a year. Like, that's not.
But here's the thing about it though, we both worked for small businesses and we love working for small businesses. But there gets to be a point where maybe you run out of room a little bit on how you want to grow and expand. And, I love the flower shop. Those are my people. I still go help them out from time to time when they need a shift covered. But I kind of just felt like I wasn't going to get any further on my journey. And I think he felt the same way. He had observed a lot and seen things, and he wanted to try out his way of running things. And as much as we love small businesses and they want to be able to pay us insanely exorbitant salaries, they just can't. So there comes a point where it's like, okay, I'm going to make less money for a while I start this up. However, being self-employed, the cap on how much you can earn is self-imposed. You're not asking somebody to raise your wage. So I like the agency of it's up to me to figure out how to make, because theoretically, the amount of money you can make is unlimited. I'm not saying I'm over here making unlimited cash, but I have the power to ramp things up or down or pull all the levers, which I think is really great. And I will also note, because I know health insurance is a thing, we didn't get any health insurance through either of our small businesses simply because they couldn't afford it. They would have loved to. So we already had our own like self-supplied health insurance. So as much as, yes, we still need to pay for it and it's not cheap, that wasn't really part of the equation, aside from the general, can we afford to live?
Yeah, it's not like you were coming out of a corporate structure where there was benefits and 401ks and all of that. Like, it was a much more lateral move, with the exception that now you have to file all the taxes and the payroll.
Yes, and I did take a small business taxes class at my local community college, which helped marginally, but I tried.
Ooh, only marginally. Darn it.
Yeah.
That's actually a great, I think, and I can't speak for all of the countries, obviously, but knowing enough about at least Australia, I don't know. People chime in on the internet and tell us where I'm wrong. But for sure for the US, like, I think we forget about the resource that is community colleges and how you could just like audit a class or, when it comes to some more of those kind of, for lack of a better word, official bookkeeping or okay, you're not necessarily going to become a CPA from one college credit, but at least you can get a little bit more of your hands on something if you're more of an in-person learner than online and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and the breadth of classes that they offer that are really applicable to career. So I said I thought I would be more involved with the contracting business than I ended up being. I took a construction management class last summer, I think, which was really interesting. A little bit different than what he's doing because he's doing remodeling and like historic old house stuff. And this was a lot of like how it works when you bid for like a big building. But I did take a lot of things out of it. And one of the biggest things was, well, I posted this in the community, my like production schedule that I made, which was based on an activity networking diagram, which is, I mean, I'm sure it's used in other project management things, but in the way I learned it was like specific to construction of like how you make sense of what needs to happen when in what order it needs to happen. It's a whole thing. But anyways, I guess just to say to your point that like community colleges have so many things you can do and you can take a class in anything and you can learn so many different things and it might not necessarily seem like the most relevant thing to what you're doing, but like there's always things you can get out of stuff if you pay attention.
I think number one, paying attention is clearly our through line of the entire conversation. But also the thing I was thinking about, you just brought it back to something I was thinking of earlier, which I couldn't remember, which was how much our past experiences inform what you're doing, right? Like how many of us have been like, oh, I wish I would have found clay 20 years ago, or oh, I wish, for this time lost. But in reality, had you not worked at the floral shop, there's no way the business you have today would look the way that it does because you wouldn't have had any of those connections or understanding or knowledge from retail, let alone understanding, like watching people pick up your work without them. I've never thought about what a huge benefit it would be to be in a store where your work is with people not knowing it's your work.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge different than an art fair because they all know you made it.
Yeah, and they know you're watching them. And I was actually thinking about this story this morning. The first day that I brought in mugs to sell in the shop, and like I'd gifted mugs to all my coworkers, and they were like, "These are cool. You should sell them in the shop," which was like a little more calculated than I let on. But I brought in a batch of them, and it was a very early version of what my work looks like now. And I was closing, so it was me alone in the shop that night. And, I was pricing them and getting ready to put them out on the shelves. And I'm at the cash register and this guy's shopping and he's getting, his card and his, whatever he was getting. And my mugs were just like there waiting for me to put them out on the counter. And I'm bringing him up and he just like grabs one and looks at it and like flips it over, looks at the price and was like, "I'll take this too." And he had no idea it was mine. And that was like the most encouraging thing. And I was like, I hadn't even put them like in their display on the floor. And that's when I was like, okay, I might be onto something here. Something that I have made is resonating with. And they weren't. I mean, I think they were like $35 at the time, which is still, I mean, for some people that seems like a lot for a coffee mug. They don't buy a lot of handmade things. But yeah, it was just really cool to know that he wasn't trying to like encourage me. He just saw it and liked it and wanted to buy it.
That's so awesome. I love that so much. No other notes. That's it. I have no question after that. I was like, that just makes me so happy. That's amazing. Yeah, it does always just take that, like, I think our brains latch on to when things aren't going well. Maybe not my brain latches on to the things that need improvement and when things aren't going well, or how can I make this better and continually improve. And that has benefits. But at the same time, like, remembering those, I mean, this is why I started those Wednesdays posts, right? Because we forget to celebrate the things that are working so well. We forget to celebrate like how you started selling from that. I mean, gosh, like thinking that story was like, I wasn't even involved in that. And it makes me so happy to be like, oh yes, let's go sell our stuff, because it's just so encouraging without it having anything to do with the work that I'm making.
The perspective goes a really long way, I think. I mean, even if you can think about if you're a thrower and you've gotten pretty good at it, like think about the first time you sat down at the wheel and how hard that was. There's a million things I can think of that used to feel really, really hard that now I just do. So I think if you can maintain that perspective and apply it to the thing that's hard now and just have that faith and trust that like if you keep doing it, it will eventually go in the category of things that used to be hard that aren't anymore. And I think I feel like I see that a lot with other makers and people I know who get caught up in the fear and I tend to hear a lot of people not wanting to do things because of problems that haven't arisen, ar- ar- arise,
Nope, a rose
arose,
is past.
things that haven't
Have
happened
yet
yet,
to
have yet
arise.
to arise. And we're all really good at making up potential problems. And a lot of times those are things that will happen. Like you will
Uh-huh,
ship a batch of mugs and some of them will break. I mean,
uh-huh.
there are things you can do to pack them well, but like something will break at some point. But I don't think you can let the fear of something breaking or something going wrong or someone complaining stop you from trying. And if you can trust that you will know what to do, and you might not know what to do right now, but the future you who's in that position will know what to do. And sometimes knowing what to do is asking your community for help and you'll deal with it and you'll get past it. So I get a little, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say annoyed, but like I want to encourage people to not stop themselves because of problems that don't exist yet. Because I do see that happening. And I mean, we're all guilty of it. But if you can push past it and just believe that when that thing comes up, you will deal with it and you will be
Mhm,
able to deal with it and it will be fine and you will be equipped. You might not have the knowledge you need to deal with that problem yet, but the problem also hasn't happened yet. So
mhm.
when you get there, you will figure it out.
I love this advice. I think it's akin to what I'm guilty of and what I know plenty of people are guilty of, which is analysis paralysis, right? You think you can research your way out of making a mistake, right? Like to avoid any of the pain, to avoid whatever. And like there's a certain amount of research that you can do, sure. Like don't just like jump off of a cliff without ever studying how to put a parachute onto your back. But, like, you're never going to fully know until you just do the thing because then you're gonna iterate right away. I mean, I've told the story before that people have heard about of, like and also, like, not my first rodeo, and I still do it, right? Like, when we started Caratera, that was, what, my 4th business at that point? So, I've built websites before, right? That's not new ground for me. And yet here I still am fixating on researching for, I don't know, a month probably of like which platform are we going to use, which platform's going to be the best. And then as soon as I made a decision based on the research, and as soon as I started actually building the freaking website, I hated the platform and promptly changed.
Yeah, nothing is permanent ever.
I could have gotten there a month earlier.
I love that you use the phrase "not my first rodeo" because last year I made a mug that says on it, "This is my first rodeo," because that was how I felt.
Did I miss that? How did I miss that?
I just made one. We use it in my house. But those are the things, all of those things, all those challenges in our house. Sometimes we say like, this is chapter 3 in the memoir because who wants to read a memoir from someone who has no challenges and no setbacks
Mm.
and no nothing? So like we'll say that to ourselves sometimes when things feel really, really hard. We're like, well, this will be great for the memoir, you know?
We need to adopt this phrase. I love this because you're right. It would be a very boring book. And in fact, in many ways, it's part of the reason I started the podcast because at the time I was listening to so many in hindsight conversations, right? And like I know we are talking about like we're talking about all this strategy in hindsight also, but you're still in the thick of it. And there was just so many like and they're still great shows. I still listen to them like how I built this and all this
I
type of
love that
stuff.
one. Yeah.
It's great, but it's always with people who have already, quote, unquote, "succeeded" by a very traditional definition, right? And so there was one I don't know if it was How I Built This or if it was something else, but I was listening to somebody talk about, like, basically mortgaging their house, like, having been in all this credit card debt to get this business off the ground, mortgaging their house to give it one more go, and if that wasn't gonna work, they were gonna be destitute or something. And then, of course, it all worked out, and they sold their tech startup for millions or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember who it was, but that's the general memory, and just being like, "But, yeah, you can talk about that now, like, 10 years later. What was it in that moment when you decided to mortgage your house and basically put your family's future at risk. Like, what was driving it then,
Yeah,
right?
and how did you know? Because a lot of those stories too, I mean, just speaking on, like, how I built this, like, so many of those stories are like, "I did this, and that failed, and I did this, and then that business failed, and I had to close it." And I think it's all about just, like, sticking with it, but how do you know what to stick with? And I guess that's what we have to start trying to pay attention to, I don't know, to, like, bring it all back, is, like, look for the evidence of, like, what people are responding to and what is working. Or maybe I don't know. I don't actually
Yeah,
know how to answer that question, I just feel compelled to say something conclusive.
I'm sitting with the how do we know what to stick with. I think it actually comes, for me, it comes back to also the conversation about making what you like and what's resonating then with people, because it's easier to stick with something if you're still enjoying it to an extent. Like, you can enjoy something and it can be hard at the same time, right? Like, if nothing else, this show is about two things being true at the same time.
Yep.
So when I say enjoy, I don't just mean like the fluid days in the studio where you're rocking and rolling and everything's just working. Knowing what to stick with can be really hard, because I also see people like jump ship before something has had a chance to work out, right? And there's also been times where I've stayed on the ship for too long when I should have jumped ship, like just even in something as monotonous as a project management system I used to work, that the company was literally going under and the pain of switching was too great and I should have switched way before,
Mm.
right? And the time lost and the money lost, whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe part of it is remembering that no decision has to be permanent. Like, you
Mm,
can take a break from something and come back to it. You can try something and then know that if it doesn't work, you can undo it. I mean, some things can't
mhm.
be undone, but to an extent, things can get undone. And I mean, there I have designs that are some of my most popular now that, like, I made a few times a few years ago and kind of forgot about, and then someone went deep into my Instagram and was like, "Can you make this?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay." And then I came back to it and iterated on it then, and now
Mhm.
it's some of my best-selling pieces, so it's
Now I
I
gotta
don't
know
know.
which one.
Oh, the triangles are what I'm specifically talking about.
Slash mountains.
Yeah, the everything has, like, kind of a mountain accent, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
we have to answer this question by any means, but I think it's helpful to know that no decision you make has to be the last decision you make.
The thing I have done for myself, and I have mentioned to other people sometimes, is like when I'm really nervous about a decision, I will walk through like what's the worst thing that can possibly happen, right? Like, absolute worst thing, right? So when things slow down, or when people have now heard the whole 2025 saga of like losing way more planned revenue than I would have ever thought in 1 year. And it was like, what was the absolute worst thing that could happen? And it was like, well, the worst thing that can happen is, at the time, as a fully self-employed household, is we don't sell anything anymore. The money runs out. We no longer have any money. We can't afford our bills. We have to sell the house and move in with my grandma on the farm. Actually, that's not that bad.
Yeah, that's a
You
pretty
know,
solid
I
thing to
love
fall
the
back
farm.
on. Yeah.
Right? Like, and now we have that privilege of a security net underneath of us to catch us. That's not the case for everybody, although I would imagine you probably have a best friend that you could call up if you need to sleep on a couch for a little while, or, like, that's not a comfortable thing. None of that would feel good. Like, that would be very stressful. But also, if you go all the way to the end, like the absolute worst thing, there would be a million steps in between
Mhm.
before we got to that point, right? Like, a bad review is not the worst thing that can ever happen. Like, a bad review switched in my brain thanks to a client who was like, who literally told me before, after they had signed a contract with me, after they had booked me, he said he literally looked for bad reviews on purpose, not to be malicious, but just because he just wanted to see how I would handle it. And it was like this light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, that's so, like, a bad review is the opportunity for you to show the rest of the world that you're a professional,
Yeah.
that you are, human, that you care for people, that, because generally speaking, unless you really effed something up, the really bad reviews on the internet are typically from people who had unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, and the people reading it who are reasonable, who you actually wanna be working with, can tell the difference.
Precisely. Precisely. So it's kind of like, but that's like this huge fear for all of us now, especially in like the world of Etsy. And it's like, you can comment on a bad review. You can leave that comment and show people that, you know, you are a kind, wonderful human that did their best.
And we also live in a version of the world where most of us understand the internet is a place where people can not show their
Mm.
faces and say things, and it's full of hot takes, and some are hotter than others. And some of them maybe are soggy French fries that aren't hot anymore.
Soggy French fries. That's actually the worst. And now I feel like I want you to make a mug that somehow references soggy French fries.
I don't know if that would sell super well.
Fair enough. It's a little it's a depressing mug. See, but now I need the survey between like waffle fries, crinkle cut. Like there's a whole path we could go down here
Yeah.
of marketing strategy with food surveys.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's what I call the delight factor. When people see something that they're not expecting to see, there is joy sparked often. And that is very valuable.
I love that. I'm going to hard right turn us because otherwise I'm going to forget. And you know that these questions exist already because you are in the community. So despite what Tim has said in previous posts, it's not cheating if you saw them ahead of time. Jessica was asking, where do you draw your inspiration from? And how did you come up with the Cheez-It and the Magnet Club ideas?
Well, I think I already spoke a little bit to where my inspiration comes from. It really does all come down to paradox and opposing things and negotiating things that exist simultaneously that are opposites, which is probably more esoteric sounding than what she thought she was going to get. Also, I love shapes and colors and things like that. The Cheez-Its, I don't know. I don't know if I can like point to a moment where I'm like, and that's when I knew I wanted to do a Cheez-It. I just did. And I mean, yeah, it is interesting to be like, how can I make this square and make it look like a Cheez-It? And like, I've spent a lot of time staring at Cheez-Its and being like, how crispy are the corners and how many of those little lines on the side and whatever.
I have to interrupt and wonder if you and I think it's Milo, who also does Cheez-Its and did the whole like, why are the notches not the same number on the opposite sides of each other? Like you two should have like a private chat going on.
Cheez-It Summit? Yeah.
Yes.
I would love that. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I don't actually know the answer to that question.
He did not get a satisfying answer from. This was like a whole Instagram saga. I think just stories of he contacted customer service. Milo, if I'm getting this wrong, I apologize, and please correct me, and we can have you come on the record if you're listening.
Well, and I love that he paid attention to that, and he probably would be the only person who would call me out for the fact that I actually do only have 5 lines on all 4 sides instead of 7 on 2 and 5 on 2 because I tried it and I was just like, this isn't worth it. I don't think this is what's important about this. I'm just going to do 5 on all sides and move on. But he might be the singular person who would notice and maybe
leave you a bad review.
Yeah, leave you a bad review. Come at me. We'll talk about it.
I love it.
Sometimes you have to make choices for your own sanity.
I just loved it so much. I was like, we really need to get like the two of you together to just like deep dive on ceramic Cheez-Its.
Yeah. I don't like have a very satisfying answer for like why I started making the magnets. I think it was just a great vehicle to continue exploring what happens when I surprise people with Cheez-It themed art, and it's been very rewarding. And then that rolled into Magnet Club because I've heard plenty of stories of people talking about the mug clubs that they start, which are cool, but I was like, I don't want to do that. I make so many mugs already. Like, I don't need to add that. And I also personally, like, I love mugs. I will buy a mug every quarter, no problem. But I kind of want mugs from different people every quarter. So I don't know. I think, and no shade to anyone. I think that's great. But I don't know. I think I was just kind of marinating on that idea if there was a version of it that made sense for me. And I'd already kind of gone down the rabbit hole with making different magnets of things. And I was like, you know what? I don't necessarily have room to pre-commit to 4 more mugs, even though I'm absolutely going to have 4 more mugs in my cabinet this year. But there's a lot more real estate on the refrigerator that I can work with. And it's a lower cost item and it's easier to ship. And when I decided to do that, I did not anticipate what a big project I was signing myself up for to do a new magnet every single month. And sometimes I'm shipping it like at the last few days of the month. And but I'm really grateful that I did because in a world of production where I am often making the same thing over and over again, which I truly enjoy. Some people hate it. I do like it. Having that monthly obligation to do something new is a really good way to force myself to continue to be creative and to think about something. And I try to make them seasonal in some way, but like a little bit more creatively seasonal instead of just like for February, I was like, I'm not going to do just like a heart, but I did the circus animal cookies because they're pink and white. And then I went a little deeper into it and I'm like, well, being a florist for so many years, February is a circus of a month. And so I don't know, it kind of keeps the wheels turning a little bit, and I'll keep up with it for as long as I can. But like I said, it's a big project I assigned myself.
I enjoy the idea of like basically your customers holding you accountable to you giving yourself creative time, like outside of production,
Yeah.
like to explore and play. That really works for my brain in a way that we shouldn't all need our time to always be productive, right? Our value is not what we produce. Intellectually, I know this. I'm still working on it in practice for myself. And so that feels like this baby step for my brain of like, oh, you have to go play. You have to explore. You have to do something new because you've made this commitment to other people, which,
Yeah.
whatever, I can digest that in therapy of why I am the way I am.
Well, and there's definitely times where I'm like, I mean, I'm working on my 7th month of it. And like, there are times where I'm like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I have a list, write things down. People do also sometimes give me suggestions, which is really fun. Just another way that like people are engaging that I didn't anticipate, which is cool. But there are definitely times where I'm like not feeling super inspired or whatever. And it, again, it just kind of, it's a slow burn and it just develops. And then usually by the end of the month when I'm shipping it out, I'm like, yeah. And the other part of the project I assigned myself is I decided that like along with them, I make and get printed like a little postcard that's like about this magnet and why I picked it. And then I also do like a blog post and then I do an Instagram post. And I don't know how this spiraled into like assignments, but it is good for me because it's like it's the creative time and it's also challenging me to actually like send an email to the email list, which is new for me since Magnet Club started. And
Mhm.
to think about why I don't know, it's just even though it can feel like a pain in the butt sometimes, it's like doing your math homework. Like it's not that fun, but now I know how to do math, so I'm kind of grateful for that. I mean, it
It's
is fun,
amazing.
but you know what I'm saying. Like
Right.
there are many pieces to it.
Right. And the funny part is, like, we have given these all to ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Like, you didn't necessarily have to do a blog post with it. Like, you could turn that off, but I also understand the benefit of it. Like, I agree with all of this content strategy.
Yeah,
But
and I mean, to be honest, like, is anyone looking at it? I know I could go in my analytics and find that out, but, like, I'm not checking that. Probably not at this point, it's new, but
right,
I'm doing it, and
right.
I'm gonna keep doing it because I feel like I should, and I started it, and that's the project that I signed myself up for, and I'm not gonna quit on it.
And it's important to finish what we start.
Yeah,
This has now
yeah.
become a parenting
No.
podcast. Okay, I'm gonna get us back to our question. Otherwise, I know we'll never finish. As we said at the beginning, we could just go. Also, I'm just gonna read some of this, even though it's not a question, because I want you to know, even though you may have already read it, but Jessica said, also, she's awesome and so supportive, and I'm so happy to have gotten to know her better through the community. So, just for
Oh,
the record,
thank you, Jessica, that's so nice.
you can save that little audio snippet for the hard days. We all need audio snippets. Okay, so Alicia asked, her question was, and we talked a little bit about why you chose the wholesale route over direct to consumer, but her other question that I wanted to make sure was, were there any specific mistakes when you got started that were big learning moments?
Yeah.
I think she means specific to wholesale, but you can take it however you want.
Yeah. Well, and I do just wanna say really quickly that, like, I don't really feel like I made a decision to start with wholesale, which is really consignment and just, like, in shop. It just kinda happened. I would say that I don't know if I would really, like, say they're big mistakes because they're just things that I, like, did that I learned later. And there's some, like, very technical ones, like, I was trying to be very thrifty with my, like, packaging and when I ship things off and recycling packaging, and that's great if you're shipping one piece, but I got to a point where I was like, I'm going to have a better outcome and a more professional look if I just streamline how I'm doing this. And I have, since I really dialed in on like, I'm actually going to invest in good packing material and do it the same way every time, my breakage has gone down to almost nothing.
Same.
Yeah. Which also, if you're in the community and you want to see how I pack and ship stuff, I did do a video there because people were asking me. But other things, I guess I don't know if I would say there's like a lot of mistakes, but there's things that have changed a lot since I started because I just learned and built. Like the fair listings I made a little over a year ago, the products are the same, but the listings are different because I keep going back and working on them. I have updated the pictures a million times because as I get better at taking pictures, I'm like, that picture that I thought was amazing and killed it 6 months ago. Now I'm looking at it and I'm like, I can do so much better than that. And the same with like the description. And I mean, there's just so much to learn that you can't start with everything right. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of mistakes I made, but I think I don't really think about it like that. It's more of just continuing to build and figure it out and not I mean, I think there's value in like not thinking of them as mistakes and just being like, all right, on to the next thing. This is how we're going to make it better.
Chapter for the memoir. We're going to use this phrase now. It's going to be a thing. Well, and to your point, I mean, I feel like your answer for that reminds me of what you were saying earlier, just in terms of a lot of the fear that we all hold before we try and do something, or trying to figure out how to figure out the things so that you don't make a mistake, when in reality, it's like, well, at some point, it's just going to happen. And
Mm.
you like future you will figure it out. You are capable.
Yeah.
Or future you will have the right colleagues or friends or community to reach out to if you don't have the answer. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes knowing what to do isn't knowing the answer. It's just knowing where you can go to get to the answer.
that is not Google or Facebook, preferably,
Yes.
just for your own sanity. Awesome. Now, I know that Debbie's question might feel tangential to Jessica asking about inspiration, but I also know that you keep track, so I'm slightly adjusting. I know that you stay aware of trends in a way to know what might be of interest in the future. So Debbie was asking about whether you gather information or inspiration, but more specifically for the types of items and colors that will be hot to sell in the future.
Mm,
And I
yes.
think this is something wholesale specific in my mind. Well, maybe not.
It
That's a
doesn't
bit of a
have to
step.
be.
Doesn't have to be, but I think the way you think about this is ahead of when it actually comes into most of our lives,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yes. I think it's really fascinating to pay attention with trends. And I think this is maybe like, just to go on a little therapy moment, like, I think this is maybe a response to like, I was totally that kid in like middle school and high school who was like, I don't like it because everyone else likes it and I want to be cool and different. And now looking back, I'm like, I feel like I missed out on some stuff that I would have really enjoyed. So I don't know. I think it's fun to keep up with those things. And I think everything's connected. One of the things I learned in I went to floral design school before I became a florist at like a night school program. Anyways, one of the things that the teachers told me that I always stuck with me, that's like, if you want to know what trends are coming around in floral, look at the interior design magazines because people are going to start buying flowers and vases that fit in with their homes. And then that's going to bleed into like weddings. And some people maybe don't even realize how trend driven weddings are. Obviously you do because you've worked in the industry, but like, and I'm not sitting here being like, how can I make the thing that's going to sell that people are going to like and change my work and cater to whatever. What I'm thinking about is just like what's interesting and exciting. And it is relevant because those are the things that the retailers are going to be stocking and the things they're going to be searching for. And so it doesn't need to be, how can I change my work to fit this? But it's, is there something I'm doing that can go in that direction that I think is interesting, that I like, that's exciting?
Mm.
And it's marketing. The other big project I assigned myself was to do like seasonal color collections this year, which I am behind on, but I'm hoping to have my summer one out soon. But anyways, and part of what it is, I made these bud vases and I did some of them in my like horizon style with the mountainy looking thing. And then I did some that were just like solid color vases. And the solid ones like weren't really moving at all. Like I didn't really have any orders for them. And I'm like, I mean, they're simple, but like I think simple works really well for retail stores, things like that. And so I kind of thought about it a little bit more and I was like, what if instead of calling them solid color vases, I call them like color block or color drench because those are the trends. So I changed it to color drenched and then I went into the like description and like added more of that kind of like color block. And then since then I've had a couple orders from. So I guess just to say, like, paying attention, I think it's easy to interpret that as looking at trends and being not genuine in what you're making because you're trying to like fit into something. But I think the more interesting take is how can you leverage those trends to your advantage of what you're already doing. And so, yeah, I mean, like in January when I was developing my like spring color collection, I was looking at like runway shows. And I'm not like the girl who knows what's up with fashion and like all the designers, but it's really easy to go on Pinterest and be like spring summer collections 2026 and like what's trending. And then you'll start to see that popping up in your home decor stores and this and that. And I think it's fun to be like, ooh, can I make that color? Which ones do I want? But I could also be looking at it and thinking, what do I make that complements that? Because if the stores that I'm trying to sell to have a wall that's all turquoise, then they're maybe looking for something that's not going to clash with that, or that will pop, or that will blend in. I mean, again, think about the stores you want to be in and think about how they merchandise. Do they monochrome things? Is it contrasting? Is it, color? Like, how do they color a story? And yeah, so I think you can have a lot of fun with that.
I love the distinction that you made in terms of you're not changing what you actually want to do just for the sake of following trends, because I do think that is a fast path to burnout generally. Unless you're like a trendy person and you're naturally going to do that anyways, then that can totally work for you. It goes back to paying attention. It goes back to what we were saying this whole time in terms of like, you're just noticing where is the opportunity to find the Venn diagram between what you like and what you like to make, and what is going to start to be pushed out into the ether, into the zeitgeist with millions of dollars of marketing campaigns behind it for whatever, retail store.
And I really do believe that it's all out there. Like, all that stuff exists that is a good fit for what you're doing. And the more you try to pay attention, it's like a muscle. Like you practice. And I think there's like the science term is like your reticular activating system. And that's the whole thing where like if you're thinking about buying a red car, then suddenly you see a bunch of red cars.
Yeah.
Like there is science to it. So if you start trying to look out for things that vibe with what you're doing, they're there, and then you can take advantage of them. If you tell yourself the story that the trend is just a trendy thing and there's no value to it and it's not going to jive and you don't want to live in that world, then that's the world you're going to live in. So I don't know, if you just like open up your purview a little bit, it doesn't mean you have to change, but there's probably a lot that's already out there for you that you can take advantage of and make the most of.
Yes. Love that. And those were our questions. They let you off easy. Maybe Tim didn't see our post.
Well, I do spend a lot of time in the Hangouts and we have a lot of conversations. So maybe some of our like main suspects for question asking have already heard me ramble on and on and on about all of these things I think about. So they know.
I love it. Well, I want to go back really quickly, and I should like wrap this up and we should both eat dinner, presumably. But because it's so interesting to me that you've did your first like set up a booth, put up the tent, pay the vendor fee, sales in that way after you had already been selling your stuff for a few years now. I'm curious what that felt like for you, like back into that direct consumer thing rather than, I mean, you have the relationships obviously with stores. There is still a relationship piece to that, but it's different than standing in a booth. And any takeaways from that, especially for people who are thinking like, at least in Northern Hemisphere for the US, we're coming into a lot of market seasons.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I've never done anything like this before. I just hadn't done that scale. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was in my neighborhood and they invited me and it was a great crowd. And because I have already thought so much about merchandising and retail and how things go together, I feel like I already had a baseline of like how, like I have a collections so that's going to be set up together over here and this is going to go over here. And again, I mean, all those years working in retail stores, watching people behave. I mean, and I've seen people in stores pick up an item, including my mugs. I've seen them pick up a mug, carry it around the store for like 15 minutes and then put it back and walk out. So, I mean, it's just interesting because you don't know. I mean, maybe they connected with it and they love it and they just don't have the money or like whatever. So I don't know. I think I did have some exposure to some of that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I have like a great answer to that question or the takeaways, but it was fun. And I definitely think that I want to introduce some more of that strategic, like person to person into my year. And it's also, I mean, it is nice to sell things at retail. And I mean, I think, I mentioned this too in the community that like I had a discount table that was all the things that like I didn't really like this or the color wasn't great or it's got like a small crack or things that just I wanted off my shelves. and I sold them at or like a little below my wholesale price. And those people got a great deal, and I still kind of made the same money that I would have if it had been a wholesale piece. I mean, they were even a little more discounted, but still, it's felt like cheating in a really good way.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, that's exactly why for people who are interested in wholesale, it's a mindset shift around pricing your work, right? Because it's just a different business model. It's also a different, like, there's certain work that works well for it, I would say. There's other work that like if you're spending 3 hours graffitoing one mug, I don't think wholesale is probably for you. Not everybody should do it necessarily, but that there is a way to do it sustainably. That means you're starting from that price point. And so then when you are in a retail situation like a market where you're the one selling the work, then you do have that flexibility to be able to give people a really great win and an awesome deal. And then you also still be able to pay for your healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. The spreadsheet math of pricing still hurts my feelings from times to time. It's not perfect, but it's a lot. I feel fortunate that I came at from this direction because it's a lot more palatable than going from doing retail pricing based on vibes alone.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh man, I'm stopping myself from starting a whole new subject because I know we could, and I know it's an hour later for you than it is for me, even though it is summer, so you still have sunlight. Don't stay at the studio until crazy late. Right, now it's dark, so now you gotta go home.
Well, we'll have to do the evening version sometime, and then we can go late into the night, introduce a little glass of wine, and we might really go off.
Right. I really think there should be something to what Debbie was talking about in terms of potters on Perry or Perry Potters. I don't remember where we landed on the name, but just like a late night ladies podcast. Just all the hot takes.
Yeah.
All of the things. I like it. Here for it. This is kind of what our hangouts are for, which are not recorded.
Which I think there's definitely some things in those, and I'm like, man, it'd be good to revisit that conversation. But there's also a lot of things that I'm like, I'm glad I don't have to listen to myself ramble about whatever. I don't know. They're great conversations, but just the amount of storage that would take to record all of those would be impossible.
Right? Yeah. And for people who have no idea what we're talking about, there are co-working hangouts inside of the community. They were not my idea. They were Yvonne's idea, 3 years ago, I want to say? She kicked it off, and it's been one of, I think, the biggest, most life-giving things in there. I very infrequently am ever even able to attend, which I frankly think is great because I never wanted that space to be like you're coming to listen to one person give advice. There's a lot of quote-unquote gurus on the internet. That's not at all. I'm not interested. No, thank you.
But I feel like at this point, we're kind of off to the races enough that you could come hang out. And I think that we've established enough of a repertoire for that. But it really is like the best of all the different versions of things because you get to be in your studio hanging out with friends who you see all the time and coworkers, but no one is physically in your space, so you can move around and not have to worry about encroaching, but you still get the company, which is such a special thing.
I love that so much. You don't actually have to share shelf space, but you get the benefit of the friendship. That should probably be the tagline of the entire community now. I think I should go change the website.
Yeah. I mean,
it's amazing.
It's really nice.
I love it so much. Okay, that's amazing. Before I forget, I just said amazing 5 times in the last 30 seconds. So that's a clear sign that I should wrap this up. Where should we send people on the internet to come see what you're doing, to sign up for Magnet Club, et cetera, et cetera?
Instagram is, of course, where many of the things live. That's at Rob Ceramics, just like it sounds. And I post Magnet Club on there if you just want to see what the magnets are. And there's also my website, robceramics.com. You can sign up for Magnet Club. There's 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, and other things. And the goal is to actually stock it more often. But yeah, website and Instagram are the spots. Or you can find me in the community if you want to come have deep thoughts about trends and Paradox and Martha Stewart. That's where I'm at.
And also probably super random, hilarious things, I will say. It's a little bit, we talk very seriously about some things and then just totally off the handle, which I enjoy.
It's a riot, I think.
Awesome. Thank you so much for making the time and hanging out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope this conversation with Robin has given you a little permission to loosen your grip on the plan, or at least to stop letting the absence of a plan be the reason you haven't started yet. The truth is, we can't really figure it all out in advance. You don't know which markets are going to be right for you and your work until you've actually done a few. You don't know if wholesale makes sense for you until you've sent a few boxes. You don't know who your people are until you've started meeting people and putting your work in front of them and seeing what happens. And sometimes, well, really more realistically, 99% of the time, if I'm being honest, the only way to get the answers we're all searching for on Google late at night, in big Facebook groups, Instagram posts, polls, wherever else, well, ultimately, sometimes it just comes down to starting before you have the answers. What I love most about Robin's story is that she will be the first to tell you she wasn't being patient and intentional and strategic. She was just doing the thing and paying attention while she did it to what happened next. That actually turns out to be a strategy. And I'll be honest, this episode was a really good reminder for me, too. Because I am absolutely guilty of the very thing I described at the top of this episode if it wasn't super obvious. The planning that feels like progress, but is sometimes just a very tidy way of stalling and not beginning. So let this be the reassurance for all of us that doing can actually come first. Just give it a shot, and we'll figure it out as we go along. In fact, that was actually always the answer. So if you're in the thick of trying to figure it out yourself, what a creative life looks like for you, whether that's with a small business or not, although reminder, friends, if you sell your work, even if you're calling it a hobby, you've sold it, you own a business. But I digress. That's a conversation for another time. Clearly, there are makers having these exact conversations inside of the community because Robin herself is one of our very own members in there. So head on over to makersplaybook.com/community to learn more and hopefully join us. We would love to see you inside. One more time, that's makersplaybook.com/community. Until next time, my friends, go get back to making your dreams a reality because together, we've got this. Audio post-production of this podcast is made possible by help from Christy Kotzfan, with promotional material assistance from Queenie Maliki. The Maker's Playbook podcast is recorded on the original homelands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee people, where the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present.